Awesome,
All right,
great. First of all, could you just introduce yourself? Tell us your name, age, and where you live. Are you a DC resident? Which neighborhood?
My name is Kelley Kidd. I am from Tennessee originally, but I now live in DC. I live in Petworth. I've been here for 5.5 years, went to school here, did avodah last year, and then wanted to stay in DC.
Wonderful. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Georgetown.
And what'd you study?
International Relations.
Great. So you said that you grew up in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe how would you describe your background and Judaism's role in your upbringing? Were you part of a Jewish community in Tennessee?
So there aren't a ton of Jews in Tennessee, as you might imagine. I was actually raised Episcopalian. I converted when I was 13 with my mom. So we joined a temple. It was Reform. It very quickly became a very important part of my life because when making an active choice in that way made it something I was really actively participating in. I also found it kind of challenging because when I wasn't brought up in that sort of traditional space, I had to make the effort to find my own way into traditions, and that's definitely an ongoing process, is figuring out where I fit and how to sort of learn the things I didn't learn for the first 13 years.
Gotcha. And how does that compare to your relationship with Judaism now? What does your Jewish identity mean to you as an adult?
That's an interesting question. It's definitely in flux. I would say I really didn't identify a ton with my Judaism in college. And then after I graduated, I did avodah, which is the Jewish Service Corps in DC. And I was surrounded by Jewish life, Jewish tradition, Jewish practice in a very new way. And it became a much more pervasive part of my life and actually a really exciting part of my life. And it directly engaged with the social justice aspect of Judaism, but not necessarily from just a Reform perspective because it was a very pluralistic household that I lived in. So I would say that currently I'm definitely in the midst of exploring because I've suddenly been exposed to a lot more Judaism and versions of it, and I'm figuring out what's the best fit for me, and simultaneously trying to cultivate a Jewish community based on what I feel like I'm looking for and what I think the people around me in my life are also looking for.
Great. Well, that's actually a perfect jumping off point to talk about your work with Temple Micah. Yep. First of all, do you do anything else at Temple Micah aside from Next Dor?
Yes. So I'm their communications and engagement fellow. So I do the communications for the synagogue as a whole. So I am working on website upkeep management, and we're in the process of kind of revamping it. So I'm involved actively in that process. I also write their emails, kind of manage their communication. And then the Next Door side is the engagement side. And what I do there is primarily, it started out mostly getting my feet wet, figuring out kind of what the community was like, what they were into, and now I do pretty active engagement, a lot of getting coffee with people, getting to know people, building relationships, and planning events that I think are a good fit for the group of people that we have.
In the simplest terms, for people who don't really know what Next Door is, could you describe it? Door means generation, right?
Yes. So the idea is, Rabbi Letterman has told me that one of our members once said that the reason they like Next Door is because it's a 20s, 30s organization that you never have to grow out of. So because it's surrounded by and supported by Micah, it's a 20s, 30s community that really is targeting the interests of people in their 20s and 30s, but at the same time it's supported by and can, if people want to, lead into longer-term Jewish life here. But at the same time, if what people want is just somewhere to make new friends, meet people, it can also be that. So how I'd like to describe Next Door is we are a 20s, 30s organization that cares about each other, cares about people, cares about relationships, cares about social justice, and cares about learning. So we do Shabbat dinners every month. We do a drink and drosh every month, which is we get drinks and do a learning, usually of a social justice Judaism blend, and then we do at least one volunteering type thing a month. And then kind of exploring other stuff. We've been to yoga, we're getting involved with JUFJ, working on their affordable housing campaign. And it's also, one of the things I really like about it is it's really responsive to what its members are interested in. So if someone wants to do something, we try to make it happen. So.
And what's your role in making sure that Next Door runs smoothly? I mean, do you organize the whole thing? Are you more of a social chair?
I do a good deal of the organizing. My particular role is planning the events, doing the outreach, making sure people know about us or hearing about us, feel like their input is respected and heard. So what I spend my time day to day doing is getting drinks, getting coffees, getting to know people, and then putting together events, coordinating logistics. And then Rabbi Letterman's role is very much to be the rabbi. She's there as a guide and a resource and a teacher.
Cool. Yeah, the program hosts a range of activities from holiday gatherings to learning sessions to social action efforts to happy hours. What's your favorite aspect of your involvement with Next Door?
The Next Door High Holy Day services are really beautiful. That was one of the first things I got to do when I got here, and getting to really engage with the traditional Jewish text and prayer and turn it into something really moving and beautiful and modern that involved an intersection between tradition and modernity was a really fun project and process to be part of. And the services themselves are really moving. We have Michelle Citrin come in, who is a singer, cantor, teacher from New York or New Jersey. And she and Rabbi Letterman lead them together, and they're just so moving and so inspiring and just like this really beautiful way to start the year. And we pack the sanctuary like it's like overflowing. So that was a really cool way to kick off the whole experience, to really see what Next Door can be and like how big it can be. But I also really like the Shabbat dinners because they're much smaller scale. I think a lot of the 20s, 30s groups in DC can be kind of overwhelmingly large. And one of the things I really like about Next Door is that it feels really familial. Like we have Shabbat dinners in people's homes and they're like 25 people. And so it really feels like you and your friends hanging out and having Shabbat. And that's just really cozy and friendly and a really nice way to make genuine, authentic relationships that I think can be harder to do in larger scale spaces.
Sounds really nice.
It's really nice.
And am I correct in understanding, are you also a case manager at Miriam's Kitchen?
I was last year. So that was what I did through Avodah. And that really led me into the social justice, affordable housing direction. That's like why I feel really passionate about it and sort of force everyone around me to think and talk about it, which is how I've brought it kind of into my work here.
Yeah, you know, there's a bit of crossover there. So you took your experience at Miriam's Kitchen and you really bring that to some of the organizational work that you're doing with Next Door. I mean, if you look at the calendar, it's not all happy hours and Hamantash and everything. You know, why are homelessness, affordable housing, hunger, feel free to jump in with any other topics that you guys are really rallying behind, but why are these topics that young Jews should care about?
So it's a hard question.
You can take your time, all recorded. So
we're having a drink in Drosh. The next one is actually on affordable housing and homelessness in conjunction with the Jews United for Justice campaign, which I'm enormously excited about because I do think it's a really, really important issue. And there are a lot of approaches. I think that Reform Judaism is in a big way centered around social justice. I think that a big part of how Reform Judaism identifies itself and its commitment to mitzvot is by repairing the world, is by respecting the existence of other people. I think that there are commandments in Judaism that instruct you to make sure that those in your community are taken care of and upheld. And when I worked with the homeless population, every single person I met became someone I had a relationship with. And I just don't accept seeing people in the community around you who are sleeping outside and not able to meet their basic needs and not being treated as worth having those needs met. Like, I just don't think that that is supporting your community. And so for me, like, in the act of making sure that those people are taken care of is part of being a responsible human and a responsible Jew, and I think it's integrated in Judaism, and motivation for a lot of people comes from Judaism, and I also think it's just a human issue, and it's about respecting other humans, and I want my Jewish community to be one that upholds the values that I have for whatever reasons I have them.
So you'd say that your Jewish values affect your work?
Yes.
Cool. And are there any other organizations that you're involved with, or?
Yeah, have you heard about the Gather the Jews Open Doors Fellowship?
I've definitely heard of Gather the Jews, yeah.
So they just started the inaugural round, I guess, of this Open Doors Fellowship, which is doing very similar work to what I do here, but it's in a non-young Jewish professional context. It's just, they have taken a group of 12 people and created a cohort, the goal of which is to deepen Jewish life and Jewish connection in DC. So the 12 of us are going out, meeting people, building relationships, and the goal is to take what often feels like a sort of transactional experience of Jewish life. Like I was talking about earlier, you go to happy hours and it's like, what do you do? What do you do? And it's never really gets anywhere, and to take that deeper and really find out what people are looking for, what people are finding, what people feel is missing, and get to really connect to people authentically and genuinely, and then also connect those people to each other and to the things that exist in Jewish life that they maybe haven't found, or to help create those things so that people are feeling more fulfilled in the interactions they're having and finding new ways to interact. So that's really exciting. It's also been cool because having a support network in the work of engagement that I'm doing here has really allowed me to expand how I think of my work, and has given me a totally new perspective, really, of how to build relationships and just how to have them be honest relationships. And that cultivating a full, meaningful Jewish community isn't about like checking off boxes. It's about going and making friends with people who are Jewish and doing the stuff that we want to do together. And that's really a lot of fun and really exciting.
Cool. Well, going off of that, what do you think is missing in DC's Jewish community, or specifically within that community for the younger generation? I mean, what do you think is missing in DC's Jewish millennial, I guess, community, and where do you see room for growth or improvement? Are there projects that you hope to take on in the near or maybe somewhat more distant future?
Yeah. So I think there are a couple things. Something that I've run into a lot is there are a ton of options, like really an incredible number of options in the city. For young Jews, for 20s, 30s Jews, there are, excuse me, numerous types of events, like a lot of different practices, a lot of happy hours, services, learning opportunities. But I think at least what I feel is missing, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, like about the fact that I converted, and I've heard this from other people who are converting or have converted, it's hard to find spaces where really intensive intellectual Jewish learning is happening and open to people who don't already have a pretty extensive background. Like you can get some Judaism 101, and that's pretty easy to access. But the spaces where delving deeper than that is happening aren't spaces that I, at least personally, feel like I could show up with my level of knowledge and feel comfortable. And I think that Next Dor, there are some, I should say. There's an organization called Minion of Thinkers, and it's still pretty small scale, but it's very much dedicated to addressing specifically that issue and providing that space. But I think that something I would be excited to have Next Dor become is a learning space. And I think that it's being connected to Micah really opens us up to that, because Micah is a very learning-oriented community. and the people in Next Dor are very like intellectual and interested in learning, I think. So I think it would be cool to create those opportunities. I also think that a group that no one quite knows what to do with are the kids who were Jewish growing up, had a bar mitzvah, and then like never really found a way into Judaism that related to them personally and wasn't just like my parents told me to. And there are a lot of those people, like a lot of those people. And I think if the goal is quantitative growth, finding a way to appeal to that crowd and have some kind of draw that makes Judaism something people are organically, personally interested in a way that they hadn't been before is what needs to happen. And I just don't know if any of us have quite figured out how to do that.
Fair enough.
So.
Well, it's not exactly, there's no simple solution. That's what we should do, so fair enough. And finally, you know, I hope you make time in your busy schedule for fun. What do you do?
What do I do?
Do you have any hobbies?
I do, in fact. I was just talking to my roommates about this, how that's such a funny question, and so many people are like, do I have hobbies? Yes, I do a lot of yoga. And I have recently gotten really into music and spend a lot of my time, it feels like, in very active discovery mode around that, which is exciting because it's just fun to always be learning about something. So I see a lot of shows, and I write, I don't know. I spend a lot of time with my housemates. They're all former Avodonics, so a lot of our time is just having Shabbat dinners and spending time together, and that's a lot of fun too.
Very cool. Is there anything that people wouldn't know about you? Anything that's, you know, not a big secret, it's just not something that people would necessarily think of when they think of
me?
Kelley Kidd.
That's a fun one. Actually, this is a good one. Another hobby of mine, I'm a costume designer, so I am currently also costume designing a play that will be going up in April. It's called Tiger. It's by Banished Productions.
Cool.
I'm really excited about it. It's a lot of fun to have that kind of creative space in my life.
How'd you get into something like costume design? Did you sew growing up?
Yeah, so hang on.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
And is this your first time designing designing costumes for that matter? Were you involved with theater?
Yeah, I was involved in theater in college. So I kind of by a fluke wound up working in our costume shop where they build costumes for the theater department's productions at Georgetown. So I found my way in there, got pretty good at sewing, got really into the creative side of it, started costume designing there, and I've costume designed for one festival, and then this is my second professional show. I also dabble in light design, and I'll be getting to play a little bit there in this show too. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Very cool. Do you ever take your sewing talents outside of the theater world? Do you ever make your own clothes?
Occasionally. I went to a festival this year. You know, I have done that. I went to a festival this year, and I got to make some stuff for it. And I, what did I do for Purim? Oh, yeah, I just tied a lot of scarves around myself. I was autumn, so I just wore a lot of scarves. But it's fun. I feel like I have a definite designer eye when I put together costumes for myself and my friends. I have the eye for detail to make them very classy. It's fun.
Nice. Is there anything that you'd like to add? Anything else that we should know about you?
I don't think so. I feel like that's most of it.
That sums it up. Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
This has been lovely.